We will now take questions from our online audience as well as the audience here in person for our second group of speakers. So I'll start with Tracy. Do we have any online questions, Tracy?
Yes, this is one. Do you have any suggestions on how to handle a situation when a woman is attacked by someone in particular because of the hijab or wearing something that would indicate her identity that way? And I guess perhaps both a community and RCMP perspective on that.
Yeah, well, I assume that when you say attacked, it's physically because of what she's wearing. So the hijab in this case, report it. That's a 911 call. That's assault. And I think, even if you're not, and if you know someone who might have been, just relaying this information to the community. The more people in the community who know what to report and when to report and who feel more comfortable reporting, the better it is. As a police agency, for us to collect data and to actually go to these calls. Because if somebody's attacked and all they do is they walk away from it, we're not going to know about that. Maybe there might be some bystanders who might call it in which case we would attend. However, if nothing is called in, we don't know. So if we have 10 attacks of this nature that are happening and nothing is reported, and we don't see it or we don't know about it, then we're not really going to attend because we don't know there's an issue. So anything that's an attack, spitting, that's all assault. And that would warrant a 911 call. And as well, just relaying the information that if there is another language that the victim feels more comfortable reporting in, that most likely it will be available since there are over 150 languages they can report in.
Thank you, Yusuf. Danielle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd say just from the community response end, we're available to provide a little bit extra emotional support, because often what I have found is when somebody is reporting an incident of being spit on or attacked, there's also likely lots of other microaggressions that they've experienced throughout their life leading up to this, either initial reporting, subsequent reporting, and so we're available to provide that support and talk, as well as we're able to refer to qualified counselors that can again look at just sort of help people to understand all the ramifications involved, all of the ways in which people have been affected by these incidences. And then we too keep the record of the information in order to help inform future educational events in the community and those types of things.
Just want to add to the RCMP has a victim services unit that goes out to calls like this as well. And they do a lot of follow-up with the victim. And within our membership itself, we do have members who speak 46 different languages, and that's quite a large percentage of our membership. I believe it's close to 25 to 30% of our membership speaks a language aside from English.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions in our audience? Yes, we do.
I actually have a comment. I'd like to thank AMSA for doing this forum and all the panelists. Islamophobia is not just a Muslim issue, it's actually a Canadian issue. And we also need to change the language, especially in the media. Alexander Bissonnette, who did the massacre in Quebec, is not a lone wolf. He's a terrorist, in my opinion. He did not act alone. We have to understand, where did the root cause come from? Where did he get his weapons from to do this massacre? This is a serious issue. Islam does not know a color or a face. Islam is in the community. You could be from China, from India, from Africa. It's a religion. I'm Muslim, I'm Canadian. I am proud that right now that what I'm hearing and all the initiatives that are taking place, but I'm really also saddened because I have a son whose name is Ahmed, and he was called a terrorist in school. So for me, I feel like, why is this happening? We need to be proud to be Muslims and Canadians. We're part of this community, we're part of this society. We haven't just suddenly arrived, we've been here for many years, and we are we're very integrated into the society. We have doctors, we have teachers, we have lawyers, you name it. So the language of fear needs to change, for one, and also this open dialogue needs to happen more. We do need to do something in our schools, in our school system. I have a board meeting next week to meet with the school board to make some changes, but we have to act together. This is not us versus them. This is a Canadian issue. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that. Very well put. Any comments from our panelists at all? Okay. Do we have time for one more question? Okay. Tracy, do we have any online questions? There is a audience question? Okay.
My question, I can think that quite a bit of this problems come out of lack of awareness or knowledge of the other culture and religions. I'm just wondering whether the RCMP in Surrey have any program. We people, we get too busy, and any program, a neighborhood, where you can have like a neighborhood watch or something, which can be used in creating a dialogue between people in the block watch. On that sort of basis, is a long-term thing. You can't change the real racist, but at least those people who have lack of knowledge, they can be more informed about the other cultures and religion. And of course, the other problem is, if you're really a mono-ethnic neighborhood, this is not going to work. It'll work only where there's a diversity of people in the neighborhood. But I got one more thing which I may as well say now, and you can answer that. Some of the other panel members may be able to answer that. As you know, in the parliament today, in our parliament, they are discussing the bill on Islamophobia. And this bill was put forward by the MP from a Muslim MP of Pakistani origin from Ontario. And one of the opposition coming to that is, people are saying, oh, this is a restriction of freedom of speech. So they take the protection of freedom of speech. Is there a need to put some limitations of freedom of speech to make sure people, it's not a free for all, that you can say what you like, you can hurt people. And just to end, I do know that in Quebec City, they have I don't know what they call them, 2 radio stations who use this sort of occasion of anti-Muslim or anti-other religion feeling to incite people, so which makes it more problematic to solve the problem.
Thank you very much. Those were a lot of questions in there. So I'm just going to, maybe Yusuf, you can start, and
Sure.
if anyone else on the panel would like to pipe in.
Okay, so I'm going to try to go through the points here. With regards to just organizing cultural sharing type activities, I feel that our agencies here in Surrey do a pretty good job of that. The RCMP, we as a diversity unit, we do participate in a lot of those types of events. With regards to us facilitating such events, we don't really do multicultural type events unless they're related to safety. So we do English language safety talks in which we invite everybody from the community to come out. However, with the goal of cultural sharing, I know there are different types of events that do happen throughout the year in which we participate in as well. With regards to this bill, unfortunately, I'm unaware of what the details are. However, with regards to free speech, in Canada, we do have that right here. However, it only goes to a certain extent. For example, you cannot utter threats, even though that might classify as free speech. There are already limits to what we can say. And the same goes with hate speech as well, right? It's not a free-for-all. So again, if that's something that you're noticing, or if that's something that you know somebody has experienced, that's something that you can report as well.
Thank you, Yusuf. Would anyone else, does anyone else have any comments, or?
I can briefly touch on the issue of free speech. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, and I'm not a hate crime lawyer, so I can't speak to the exact contours of how that legislation works, but I can speak generally, and I can emphasize what Yusuf said about how in Canada we don't have unfettered free speech. That's not the way that our Constitution has been interpreted by courts. There are limits to what you can and can't say. And if something that you have said is construed as a threat, directly or indirectly, that's actually illegal speech. And I think it's important to recognize that it's not a free-for-all. You can't say whatever it is that you want to say. If you're saying something that's threatening, that can incite people to violent activities, those are things that you're not permitted under our law, the way that it currently operates, to do. And I think that maybe that's something that we should maybe be talking about more as well. I think that there's a lot of discourse about that issue happening in Quebec right now, but in other parts of Canada, I'm not sure people know that that is how our law operates in Canada. Free speech law is different here than it is in other countries, particularly in the US. We have a much more, I think, collectivist attitude to it, where historically in our law, we recognize that we have to make sure that people's safety is kind of the first priority.
Thank you, Krisha.
What about billboards? Putting billboard advertising and having a hotline that's across Canada that you can report anyone who's inciting?
I think that those are, if that question was directed to me, those are things that we want to do. So we're still at a stage where all of these things take money to do. Advertising is really expensive. We're just kind of an ad hoc group of nonprofit organizations, so we don't have money to put to that. But if anybody wants to make a donation to ILA, get in touch with me and I can let you know where you can do that. But we want to make that a priority in the next coming months, because we still feel that people aren't fully aware that the hotline exists and that you can access different services through it. So
Great.
I think that's something we want to do, funding notwithstanding.
Thank you. Thank you, Krisha. Thank you, everyone. So we'll have to move on just in the interest of time. We're going to start the panel discussion with our speakers now. And during the online registration, we asked participants to share stories, initiatives, and issues from their communities all across British Columbia. And so what we're going to do now is I'll interweave some of those into our panel discussions, along with some of the questions from our in-person participants and those online. So what I'd like to start with, and then feel free just to sort of discuss it amongst yourselves and pass the ball around. What can we do to overcome barriers to accessing services in communities? So I don't know, Danielle, if maybe you'd like to start with that.
Sure. What we can do. So in diversity education, we take a couple different approaches to accessibility in our event planning and whenever we try and host community consultations. So it helps to identify what some of the barriers are. So when we're hosting a community event, we try to put on our posters things like, this is an accessible event. If you require transportation or childcare, translation, interpretation of any kind, please contact our office to make arrangements to make this event available to you. We do what we can if we're promoting an event to people of different languages. We'll have it translated. We'll post it in relevant media sources. So if we're doing an event that's outreaching to the Punjabi community, we'll make sure to get it on the Punjabi TV stations, the Punjabi radio stations, make sure we're connecting with the right people, have our posters up in gurdwaras or other relevant places where people gather. Those are just some of the things that are coming to the top of my mind as I think about accessibility and accessing events, and then continuing always to promote the different things that are available, right? Like translation when you call in, those types of supports, just continuing to share that with community members, being present at community events to continually let people know what is available to them.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I guess with respect to policing, I did speak about a few of the barriers that exist, primarily the reluctancy to call in and to report issues. And for our part, what we do is we do a lot of outreach. We do work very closely, like I said, with community leaders especially. In certain communities, some of these community leaders have quite a bit of say, and working with them and ensuring that they understand the importance of reporting, talking about things like translation services, working with community partners, and just being in the know of what community partners are doing and some of the concerns that they're experiencing from their clients. That helps us as well gather our information and kind of formulate an appropriate engagement or a response with respect to engagement of the community.
Krisha, did you have?
Sure. Another thing that I think is important to recognize, especially if you're someone who's providing or facilitating the provision of different services, is in addition to trying to be aware of the abilities and limitations of the communities that you're serving, it's also important to think about your own competencies. In particular, and I'm sure that Fatima can speak to this as well, when you're dealing with communities, particularly refugee communities, you're dealing with communities that have experienced a lot of trauma in most cases, people who've had specific experiences that contribute to, in some cases, their reluctancy maybe to seek help from authority figures. And finding ways to develop your own abilities to, first of all, acknowledge that these are issues that these individuals are dealing with, whether it's learning, and then finding ways to kind of adjust how you're doing your job to accommodate those needs, and whether that's developing your own cultural competency skills, where you're learning about different communities and the ways in which you are normal to communicate and deal with people in those communities, and kind of adjusting what you do based on that knowledge. And also, again, educating yourself about the effect of trauma, particularly in different migrant refugee communities, and how you can adjust the way that you provide your services to do it in a way that's non-threatening and that is able to address those particular unique needs. So yes, I think it's important to be conscious of the people that you're serving, but don't forget to think about yourself and your own skills as well.
Thank you. Fatima Handel, would you like to add anything to that?
What I would like to add, what Krisha said, is that what we have learned, we were not prepared as BCMA, BC Muslim Association, we were not prepared for the scope of work. We were not prepared. We felt that we had a set of things that we would do and everything would be, fine and they would integrate. But the challenges that we did face were enormous. We felt inept many a times to help them understand, because we were finding it and struggling hard to understand because of where they came from and what they had experienced. We had no knowledge of that, the impact that they have gone through. We had no knowledge of the power that they had experienced. And it was very difficult for us. It took us a lot of time, a lot of understanding, a lot of communication, a lot of talks with them to even get the sense of what they were feeling. And because they had come, I'm referring Syrian refugees, had come from war-torn environment and in the refugee camp, they had a lack of trust, and that was very hard to build with them, the lack of trust. They were finding it difficult to trust authorities. And we had to kind of make sense of that with being a channel, basically communicating with the authorities and with them to help both parties understand. So I think as service providers, this is very important to understand where they're coming from and what has impacted them. And being conscious of that fact will make us more effective in the work.
Thank you. So another question I'd like to pose to you is, often in this work, as you know, our member agencies, we already buy into this. The importance of anti-discrimination. So you're almost, preaching to the choir, like you say. How do we make inroads with people who don't buy into this or who oppose it? And I know we touched on that a little bit, but maybe we can delve deeper into that if anyone has any insights.
If I may.
Please, yes.
What we have learned over years and what we emphasize now is communication. We would like to have a communication, we would like to have a conversation. I'm talking in respect with Muslims. When you have questions or you have doubts or even anger over some things that you may have heard or seen, it is better for you to communicate with us. Talk to us, ask us questions, start this conversation. It may lead to something that you were not aware of, and it may lead also to information that we were not aware of was happening as well. So this is something that we could help each other. As Canadian community, I think it's beneficial for each and every one of us, as a whole society.
So you talked a little bit about engagement. What do you think would prevent people from engaging in these types of issues?
I think preconceived notions about Islam, also the media, has not been very favorable. People choosing to only listen to some rhetoric and ignoring the truth. If we are aware of the truth and are educated and are informed, I think we will be able to understand and rationalize the reality of what Islam is and what Muslims are about. As one of the guests here said, we live here, we've lived here for years. We are productive members of the community. We have our homes, our families. We are part of the society. We are in your neighbors. We help each other. We teach your children. We take care of you when you're ill. And this is something that Canadian society is about. We are not separate from you. We are the same. The only difference is I wear a scarf, and that is it, and I'm a Muslim.
Thank you. So another question I had is, and we talked again a little bit about this before, but what are some ways people can get involved at the grassroots level? And this could be for anybody. Yes, please, anyone. Fatima, if you'd like to start, or Danielle, please.
Okay, sure. So Grassroots, our Fraser Valley Human Dignity Coalition, is a grassroots group of people that meet together quarterly. They share their own initiatives, what they're doing in their own communities, as well as learn about what other people are doing. These meetings are open to the public. We love to have more people attend. I think another way to get involved is to find out where those multicultural events are happening and attend them. Find out when the open mosque days are and go. Invite your friends, bring them to places, right? Notice where there's groups of people hanging out in a park and go say hi. Chat with them for a while. I think there's lots of grassroots organizing happening. So connect with your local community service agencies, and just walk out into the community and say hi.
Any other ideas? Fatima, did you want to say something there?
I think I agree with Danielle, and as I think even contacting the BC Muslim Association, even walking into one of our mosques, asking to speak to one of us, setting up a time to have a conversation, have coffee with us, sit down and have a chat with us, and bring your concerns, if there are any. Bring your concerns. We are open to a conversation. We are open to understand what you may be experiencing, because I do understand that there is a fear at the other end too, as there is fear at our end. The fear is we don't know who our neighbor is. Get to know your neighbor. I have neighbors, my neighbors got to know me, we are good friends. Get to know a Muslim neighbor. Ask them, your coworker. Instead of ignoring your coworker, I would appreciate if my coworkers talk to me and ask me about Islam. And if I don't know the answer, I will tell them, please ask a scholar, because I am not a scholar. But I am ready to have a conversation, and many of us are ready to have a conversation. We feel hesitant to talk about it. We feel hesitant to put ourselves there because we feel that we have a very negative light on Muslims, especially women with our scarves. We feel judged, that the scarf that we wear is forced upon us, which is not the case. And just that fact that if somebody is aware of it, this is my choice, this is what Islam tells me to do, and I'm following my religion, and that is it. My husband has no, I should say in it. So this is these kind of conversations. Please do have a conversation. I encourage everybody to do that. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. Yusuf, you had talked about some outreach the RCMP does with going to different places of faith, and I'm wondering if you might be able to talk a little bit about that and how that has made a difference in educating people.
Yeah, normally we reach out. If anything, our unit is the consistent face. So we're the contact that the leaders of different religious sites or religious centers or cultural centers calls if there's any issues. But another thing is we work with them to arrange talks whenever congregations are in on a number of different topics. So whether it's reporting suspicious activities around the grounds, or if it's just finding out more information about calling police, or if they have any question about the law here in general, we'll go in and we'll talk to them, and we'll work, depending on the organization, we can work with our membership who speak different languages to come in and deliver that language, or deliver that presentation in a specific language if required. But basically what we do, when we do that, people are seeing our faces over and over and over again consistently. And what we find is when we say we're educating newcomers or refugees about trusting the police, and we're getting through to them, it's not a one-time thing. We don't come in, talk for an hour, and then they all of a sudden trust us again. We've had instances where we couldn't even come in uniform, and because the person had such a traumatic experience with law enforcement in that uniform. So we had to come in plain clothes, and after an hour or an hour and a half conversation, the person said they were ready for us to come in uniform the next time. So that was a step forward. But we adjust our expectations in terms of what we're hoping to get out of it in terms of level of trust. At the same time, we acknowledge that people, that when you've lived in an environment for so long, you're not going to change your views and your outlook overnight. Yeah. So we do that consistently. And while on that topic, I just want to reiterate, when we're talking about grassroots involvement, I want to just reiterate the need for people to, just to get involved in community events, whether it's cultural events or, just neighborhood events, because when we talk about discrimination, that arises out of stereotyping. And yeah. when you stereotype, you may see instances of, one or two instances of that stereotype, and then you start to look for that in a particular population. And that's all you can think of. You pretty much associate that with the population. And when that leads to some sort of action as a result, then you're dealing with discrimination. And the best means of preventing that is education. And and early dispelling of those types of misconceptions as well. So,
Thank you. No, that helps. Handel, did you want to maybe say anything from that academic perspective?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think a lot of what has been said is really wonderful and useful. I think both Yusuf and Fatima's point about being open to discourse, I think this is really important. But I think an earlier question of yours was about people who are not yet on board.
Yes.
So I think for a lot of people who are neutral, who might not know, for example, about, who black people are or what Islam is about or whatever, then having information, getting knowledge becomes a way of getting to know, and that helps to reduce or overcome prejudice. But I have to say that as an educator, I think there's limits to that. There's different kinds of ignorance. We're basing this on ignorance, that people don't know. That's why they've prejudged, and that's why they're discriminating. There's also another kind of ignorance, which is that people don't want to know. So the person who doesn't want to know, you can take them to as many mosques as you want. You can have them engage in as many discussions as you want. They do not want to understand, so they don't get it. They don't get it because they don't want to get it. So there's got to be another strategy. The strategy that's been articulated, I think, is wonderful, and it will work for a lot of people. But for some other people, there've got to be some other strategies. If you think that there is this divide, and I love the comment from the audience about how we're all in this together, right? We're all Canadians. If you have separated yourself and you think that you are superior in a way, then another strategy is to call people exactly on that, right? If you are Canadian and you have these Canadian values, I always love this idea of values. It's as if, there are places where people don't value life or whatever. It's always very strange to me how we separate Western values from other values. I don't know what those values are. I guess in Africa, people think it's okay to just kill everybody. But anyway, so if you have those values, then another strategy is to appeal to exactly those values. This is why at the higher level, there is multiculturalism, and then there's also interculturalism. One of the differences is interculturalism places a lot of emphasis on dialogue, the kinds of things that all the speakers here have talked about. So we need to bring more of that into what we're calling multiculturalism, right?
Yeah.
And that idea of dialogue, and appeal to people's idea of being cosmopolitan. If you think that you're so wise, if you think your culture is so superior, why is it closed? Why don't you want to get to know other people? Why have you assumed? So that can be another approach. It doesn't negate the approach that's been articulated. But I think for those people, as an educator, for those people who don't want to know, it's another kind of ignorance. One kind of ignorance is I don't know. Another kind of ignorance is I don't want to know. No matter how much information you give me, I just don't want to know. Right? And I will keep my prejudices. Then you ask people about where those prejudices are from and how productive they are, and whether they in fact make you superior.
Thank you, Handel. Wow. We talked a little bit about interculturalism, so that's a whole topic for a different forum, I think. But this actually brings us to the end of this forum. This time just went by really fast, and I want to thank all the presenters today for your passion and your dedication and your commitment to the work that you do, and for sharing your stories with us today. Thank you for being here, and thank you to everyone here in the room as well as online for your contributions to today's discussions. We appreciate the openness of your comments and your willingness to participate. So just wanted to let you know that you will be sent online a forum evaluation. So if you can please complete that as soon as you can and send that in. For the in-person participants, please stick around and join us for a networking session for the next about 30 minutes. Outside in the atrium, we have some refreshments for you, and you might be able to carry on the discussion and the dialogue with some of the presenters if you catch them in time. So a special thank you to our AMSA team here and at the office for all your efforts. Thank you for everything you do to put these events together. And again, thank you to our funder, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.